It looks like we're all right. Okay, let's see. I'm going to call this meeting to order, make a motion to call it to order at 1:04. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. So before we go, we've got a new member, Ed Schroll, who needs to be sworn in. So Sarah and Ed, take over.
Well, I would ask you to raise your right hand, but that would probably be the unsafest thing to do. If you can repeat after me. I state your name,
Ed Schroll,
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Washington,
Constitution of the State of Washington,
the laws of the State of Washington,
the laws of the State of Washington,
the ordinances of the City of Ocean Shores,
the ordinances of the City of Ocean Shores,
and will faithfully perform the duties of
and will faithfully perform the duties of
Parks Board member for the City of Ocean Shores, Washington,
Parks Board member for the City of Ocean Shores, Washington,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
All right, good to go.
Oh, well,
So-
welcome, Ed.
Well, thank you. So can I ask one real quick question?
Yeah.
Why I did not get any kind of free notice to this? Because we're coming back from Port Orchard right now. And
Mhm.
if it hadn't just popped up on my calendar, I wouldn't have known this 10 minutes ago.
Okay, well, the email that you have set up with the city or whatever email you submitted to the city, this agenda went out on Friday, right? Sarah, it was emailed Friday.
I think you might be frozen.
Okay, all right,
I
well,
used the-
we can come
Yeah.
back to that.
Okay.
Okay, so before we do the approval of the meeting agenda, I would like to make a motion to add a couple of items
Well,
to the agenda. Oh,
My email is my personal email.
okay, so Ed, you're saying that you have not set up an Ocean Shores email account yet? Or do you want to use your personal email account? It's up to you. Most of us have an Ocean Shores specific Parks Board email account.
Well, all I have is my voted
Okay.
on the board. I've received absolutely nothing. So I've just been kind of waiting to see what might happen.
Okay, and
I've been emailing
I
the
just don't
email
want to
address
miss any
that
of
was
the
on the
meetings.
application, so I'll double back with Ed and see if that one's not correct or something. That's the one I've been emailing the correspondence to, which the board has been included in.
Ed, you were appointed at the same time Heidi was, so over about a month ago, actually, correct? In October 11th?
I believe
Okay.
so. Yes.
Okay, so Heidi was on the October 11th meeting, the last one, but you weren't, so you didn't get that email then, is what I'm hearing.
No, I haven't received any emails. Matter of fact, I've asked several of the city council members to let me know just what's going on and to get me some information.
Okay, well, nobody contacted me from the city council, so I apologize. But going forward, you and Sarah can have a conversation after this meeting at some point before the next meeting to get something set up. So going forward, you can get notification, okay? But you're on now. Glad to have you. Hey, Ed, could you do me a favor? Could you, since you're freezing a lot, could you mind just muting or stopping your video? It's really hard. It's distracting. So, but then if you want to chime in, just obviously unmute yourself. So that'd be easier. Okay, so let's try this again. So before I ask to approve the meeting agenda, I'd like to add a couple of items to the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to do that. The first item is going to be under old business for budget. I want to have a quick conversation about budget. The other one under old business is Chris Bridges has requested that someone else do the secretary note taking. And the third is under new business for talk about Parks Foundation. Do I have a motion to add those items to the agenda?
One motion.
Okay, great. Or the second
Second
motion.
the motion.
Sorry,
Okay.
second motion. I motion that. Sorry, I have a second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's do that. So with the new amendments, I make a motion to approve the meeting agenda. So do I have a second motion?
I second.
Okay, great. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, perfect. All right. Approval of minutes. So I didn't see any problems with the minutes from last meeting. Do I have I motion that we approve the meetings from last minute? Do I have a second?
I
I'll second that.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any opposed? Nope. Okay, great. So then we approve the meeting minutes from October 13th, 2021. Okay. Moving right along. Public comments. I know Don Williams, I see that you are back on again. Welcome back. Would you like to make a comment? You have 3 minutes.
Yes, am I on there?
You are.
Well, it's nice to see the park board back in operation. And one of the things that has been absent from the council meetings at all is anything about the parks budget. I listen, I'm there all the time, and I have heard nothing about the budget. There's been a lot of things discussed by council members, a lot of proposals made for special things to spend down our very high ending balance in general fund to get it down to 2.5 million, which is the new level. And I think they're doing that. And I would like to put a request in for 2 budget items. One is that you finally, after so many years of neglect, I mean, not you people, but the city, pave and fix the parking lot of our flagship park, North Bay Park, and the boat ramp. I was disappointed that last summer when we had street crews right out in front of that park, that those potholes there that are axle busters, and I spoke to the council about this, but got nowhere, were repaired, and they're still axle busters. The second thing is, I think you should set, my number 2 priority would be putting in a real restroom at the second park on the lake. Now, the money for this, it's got to come out of the budget. I point out to you that the summer fund program, which was something that's supposed to happen every year, it did not happen last year, has a budget of $60,874 for the biennium. Half of that was to be used last year, half of it was to be used this year. The money is in the budget for this year. It has not been used. It has a zero charge against it. I would suggest that you possibly consider taking half of that, which is not now available, it was not used last year, and try to spend it as partial payment for the parking lot and also for the restrooms and the what's the name of the second park on the lake?
Are you talking about Chinook?
Yeah, Chinook. Yeah,
Yeah.
Restroom budget for Chinook? Okay.
Yeah, and our flagship park, North Bay Park, fix that damn parking lot.
Okay.
Okay, and like I say, I suggest that you recommend to the city finance people that they take half of the $60,874. That's a line item in the parks budget. I'll even give you the bars code. You can write this down: 001-760-000 576-80-31-04 has an appropriation of $60,874. Half of it was not used last year. You should recommend that be spent as a down payment for one or both of those projects. And that's what I have to say. And welcome back. I'm glad to see our Parks group back again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. Okay, got that noted. Thank you. Any other public comments?
And I'm going to have to drop out in a few minutes for an appointment, so I'll be dropping out. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other public comments? Okay. All right. So announcements. Any general announcements from anybody? Nope. Okay. All right, let's start with old business, adopt a park sign. All right, so I know that Chris had a couple of ideas, and Anna, I sent you that information. I just went to the fire department and got what they do with their adopt a fire hydrant and how they set it up and some of the ideas that they had. So what did you think about that, Anna? Did you get that?
I think it's a great format. I think that we could come up with something very simple. I don't think that it needs to be overthought or over complicated. I did look into a couple different variant signs, styles, sizes, price points, things like that. I'm confident that we can get or offer anybody who does adopt a park sign, a couple different choices in the sign sizes, whatever we all agree on, anywhere from about $70 to really no more than 100. And these are some pretty nice signs that I think will hold up, especially in our weather here. And this would be something that, maybe they could take they can take with them once they have completed their 2-year or whatever time frame we come up with of adoption time. Besides that, I just, as far as I went, I'm not at all, nor do I claim to have a green thumb, so I don't know anything about any offering of plants that could work or anything like that. I'm really hoping somebody else can kind of take over from there. But I definitely found out some information about some different signs, that I could put all that together and send that over to everybody just to take a look at what ones I have, metal, plastic, different ideas.
Okay, great. And then what's the thought for the board on, because the fire hydrant program, they charge $25 per fire hydrant. I know that we've asked that if a person or people adopt a sign, that they would be responsible for the plants. I mean, when you adopt a fire hydrant, you're responsible for buying the paint.
Mhm.
Do we want to charge a small monetary fine or a small monetary charge, or do we want to just say, here you go, you can have it for 2 years because you're going to be responsible for plants and upkeep?
In my
What's your thought?
opinion on this would be that I think people who invest some of their money into something take a better pride in it, and they, look for a better return. I think if they're not invested in it in some format, they may just consider that's just to walk away from it once they find some difficulty, or if the plants, that they've planted died or something along those lines. They may just say, I'm out of here, I don't want to do this anymore. But if they've invested some sort of a commitment, financially, as well as the form to fill out, they may be a little bit more apt to stick with it and fulfill their 2 years. And if they know that it's also kind of being checked on and approved from what they've done, they may be a little bit more committed to investing in it a more.
Nick, can we charge? And where does that money go?
Yes, it can be charged. The Parks Fund is in the general fund, so it would go into the general fund.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Okay. And Chris, you had an idea.
I do. And this is a 180, so stay with me, people. In my driving around town, I notice a lot of people use oyster shells in their landscaping. And I thought that would look really beachy if we just put oyster shells at the bottom of the park signs. And I called Lidl Seafood, and we can get a pickup truck full of oyster shells for $30.
Wow.
I know that changes the whole subject, but it would save us a whole lot of time and that we could put on the dog park and other things and not have to be dealing with, somebody's park assignment expiring and getting that whole thing going. But so that it's just a classic case of keep it simple.
Okay.
And that's what my idea.
I could understand that concept and I agree with it, except that weeds will grow up through there and we will end up still having to have some sort of maintenance, just from the
I
storms
thought of
happening.
that. And we could put that mulch guard down under the oyster shells, and then we could also spray weed killer on the oyster shells if that is a
Yeah,
problem.
I don't think
Nick
people are
is-
gonna want weed killer going out there.
Nick is shaking his head, but hang on before you answer, Nick. Heidi, you keep raising, go ahead.
Yeah. So, you have my video on separate from the sound. So, well, my thought is if we're going to make signs for them to, that acknowledge that they've adopted the park, that's going to cost some money, and not every park may be adopted. So, and I agree with what Anna said about people making the investment. So I think we have to charge a little bit because we don't have the money anywhere in the budget really that I saw to fund those signs. And so I feel like we have to charge something. We can't, otherwise we're just letting people, or otherwise we're just asking them to adopt the area and there would be no recognition.
Okay.
Also, aren't we opening up the adopt a sign as well to businesses, not just to the local, to the
Sure.
public? So I mean, if a business wanted to adopt one, they could have a business sign, they can write that off as an advertising expense, or, it's a contribution or whatnot. And I think that would be, something else that could get some really nice looking signs.
Okay, and then Nick, you were wanting to say no about herbicides to Chris. So
Yeah.
do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, just a quick note. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, there is a prohibition on the use of anything glyphosate related. And so that means no Roundup, no traditional weed killers. So there are alternative products out there, but at the end of the day, they're 10 to 14 times more expensive in most cases. So in our case, we're staying away from it just as much as reasonably possible, because I don't want to kick the nest, if you will.
I know vinegar works really well too.
Or what about salt? A large amount of salt usually will pretty much, get rid of anything in that area. So what if we did just like a salt?
That could be, either one of those would be an alternative.
Again, part of my concern as it relates to both salt or, an acid or a base like vinegar, putting sodium chloride on the ground is something that at the end of the day, those products are going to continue to leach just like anything else that we put on the ground. And that was the major driver behind what everybody was focused on. And so, as it relates to sodium, our water content that we deliver to our customers is already higher. And so, whether that be, roadside vegetation control or, just in these certain areas, I guess in the grand scheme of things, we can say, hey, in targeted cases like, at these adoptive park signs, here's our control practice, but it kind of defeats the purpose of, having the adoptive park and people, kind of participating on a regular basis. So, and developing that ownership. So I don't know, 6 one way, half dozen the other. I can find a solution, whichever way you guys want to go.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Chris.
There you go. Oh, no, I said that sounds doable.
Okay, all right, so great job. So Anna, what I'm hearing is you're going to send us that information on signs.
Mhm.
We should probably circle back as a group and talk about how much we want to charge.
And what do
there's-
we want to offset for the price of the sign? I mean, if we're talking, and I'm literally just throwing out random numbers right now. Let's just say we are charging $20. Is that something that we want to go for maybe the $50 sign and we're offsetting the other $30? Or is it something that if we, say that the $100 sign is, and maybe we need to consider the price of adopting it a little bit higher so that we're, kind of coming out a little bit better on the budget.
Okay. Hi, Ed, you're back.
Yeah, it's difficult when you're on the
Okay.
road. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fine. Did you probably didn't hear any of that about the Adopt a Park sign?
I did not.
Okay, so, well, I'm gonna make a motion anyway that we're going to put this on the next agenda. We will talk about when we have more information about the sign sizes that we want, and everybody come back to the table with an idea for how much we want to charge and go forward from there. So motion is to continue talking about the Adopt a Park sign. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, off-leash dog. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Nick.
Oh, no, it's quite all right. One thing that I was going to suggest, and you guys are probably already along these lines, is, again, when you look at the signs, they're consistent, specifically to, show, kind of a branding, if you will, of the city of Ocean Shores, publicly owned parks. One thing that I don't know if you guys have talked about, if you've thought about, kind of along the lines of what, Chris was talking about, the basic framework of simple design standards, whether that be using crushed oyster shells or this type of plant or this type of plant. I don't know, and I'm sure opinions differ on that, but part of why the signs were established the way they were was to establish the brand for the parks. And so the landscaping, just a thought to consider. I know this item is going to be continued, and so maybe something for the board to consider over the next couple of weeks as we roll into the next meeting, is that the landscaping legitimately could be part of the branding, or it could be something separate and independent. So just food for thought. Wanted to throw that out there before we moved on.
Can you tell me, Nick, in the beginning when the signs were originally planned, and to have that the continuity through them all, what was the landscape's original idea? Since they made a raised planter area around the sign as opposed to just putting them directly in the ground, what was the original landscape idea?
I don't recall. I'll dig around and see if I can find the original concept drawings to see what they were envisioning. But I think their focus was on the hardware as opposed to the vegetation. But I'll dig and see what I can come up with.
Okay, so Nick, so basically what you're saying is when it comes to the actual landscaping and picking at the plants is, I got a little lost.
Yeah, the idea was if there's two ways to approach this. Way number one is approaching it just like the fire hydrant or adopt a hydrant program, which the designer or the adopter or the organization that's going to be taking care of that, they have their own design. And when you look at all of these hydrants, there's no two that are the same. And
Okay.
while that's a neat concept, when we talk about the branding associated with the entrance of the parks, having them the same actually does offer, I think, a little bit of value. Again, I approach things as it's 6 one way, half dozen the other. We can work either way. But it was just a thought process to say, hey, is it that we're trying to get people emotionally invested in that facility, or are we trying to let their creativity come out and have a little bit of fun with the facility? And those are, I think, two different things. Just like I said, just trying to get juices flowing for when people are sitting there thinking about this at a later time. I know there's a little bit of a ways to go before we kind of close the loop here. But again, as it relates to vegetation, there's two paths. Path number one, consistent, same across the board, whether that be this type of plant, and this type of plant with oyster shells, or just carte blanche, letting the artist go to work.
Right. So basically, if we decide as a board that someone's gonna adopt a park sign, here's the parameters. You have to have oyster shells, you have to have this, so they're all the same. Or like you said, carte blanche, but you can't make it political. You can't have ground cover you can't plant mint that we know is a weed that will grow everywhere. So, you have to have parameters. right? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's basically what I'm throwing out for the board. to
Okay.
consider.
All right,
And I
okay,
agree with that. I think that's a must.
okay. Yeah. Okay,
That's
thank
kind
you.
of where I was thinking with the oyster shells, because not crushed oyster shells, but whole oyster shells kind of stacked up in the hole. And it would just kind of say, once again, it would be continuity through all the signs, and it would look beachy. That's kind of where I was coming from. So then we wouldn't have to, it would be like one and done, and we don't have to worry about weeds growing up in somebody's planter box and them not dealing with them, or just stuff like that.
Yeah, and you know, we have crushed oyster shells at my house and they pack down nice. They're not dry. It's almost like a concrete when they get wet. So that's kind of
Well, that's why I was
something
thinking about leaving them whole. Because when I drive around and see people using them in their landscaping, a lot of times they're whole. They're left whole, and they look really cool, and they're just a big pile of oyster shells.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. So the off-leash dog park. I got a couple of very rough numbers from, obviously Nick hasn't done any. I haven't asked Nick to, go to bed or do anything. I just wanted to get an idea of what it would cost roughly. But we have, fencing, to redo the fencing would be about $35,000 roughly. That's clearly can go higher than that. And the other is the goat head issue, which we would have to consider some kind of an, Nick, as you know, some kind of an herbicide application to get rid of them. And that would be about my understanding is it would take 2 years to get rid of them, with a fall and a spring application each year, is my understanding. So, and I know that the golf course had an issue with that at one point, and they got rid of those goat heads. And it cost roughly maybe about $4,000 a year to do that for the 2 years, maybe a little less on the second year. So those were some just rough estimates. And the other thing was that Councilman Noble in the last meeting asked that we talk to the neighbors. And so Heidi and I literally went out Saturday afternoon and knocked on doors. And we were able to speak to, let's see, 1, 2, 3 houses.
Four.
4 houses, 4,
Yeah.
sorry. So basically the number one concern with Chinook Park in particular, not necessarily just for a dog park, but we went to them and said, hey, tell us how this is working for you. What do you see Chinook Park as? Do you like it? Is there any improvements? Give us some feedback. And they were really receptive. We were pretty surprised at that. We were expecting them to shut the door in our face, but they were great. They were happy that we asked the question. So the number one concern though is goat heads. They said that big grassy area, kids run on it, they fall, they get the goat heads in their hands, on their knees. Dogs, they see people walk their dog and their dog's all yelping, they have to pick them up. So no matter what, even if we don't put a dog park there, it's still, those goat heads are an issue, and it's preventing people from using that grassy area. So that was the number one that we heard across the board. Another issue was the irrigation. Even though they have irrigation, it's not watering the inside area. It's only watering a circle, Nick. So that was another issue. So they want to make sure that the grass is getting the adequate coverage that it needs, because we know that water will help keep the goat heads down. Another concern was the boat ramp there was uneven, but Heidi and I looked after that. We didn't see that it was uneven. So I'm not really sure what that was about, but I haven't launched a boat there, so I can't say. The house just north of Chinook Park, has the fence line, gets a lot of visitors onto her dock from the park because the fence line stops before her end of her property. And so she would like to see that fence line extended. And she would like to pay for a gate to be put in. So then she could have a lock on it. So then she could just open and let, kids go through that she knows. I don't know if that's something that we can do, but that was an option. She
Yeah, can I
said,
make a comment on that,
Mhm.
Kristen? So,
Mhm.
yeah, so that the people just to the north, so I think it stops at the back of their property, but then on city property, there is no fence. And she said she's had multiple occasions where people have been down on her dock, sitting on her dock, picnicking on her dock, and she's gone down and told them, this is our dock. And they said, no, it's part of the park. So because they can access it from city property. So that's a real challenge for her, but she wants to be able to still have access there. So that's why she suggested that they would pay for a gate if the fencing could be extended.
I would wonder though, with putting a gate in legally, if there'd have to be some sort of an easement paperwork, filed or something, because with her having the direct access to the park via a gate that she owns. Is she owning and maintaining it? Does the city need to maintain it? Is if it's left unlocked and one day it's just and somebody does come onto her property and gets hurt, is it because I think there's a lot of legalities there that would need to be maybe looked into. Because not only
I
that, but
know-
once she sells the property, the next person who comes along could be very, I don't want people at, there's a gate to be here with everybody trying to come through it all the time. So that might be something we may need to consider, the legalities of all that.
Yeah,
I know
have some
that-
thoughts. Go ahead.
The community club parks all have a gate accessing every lot that's on facing the park. Like at
Damon.
Damon Park and Ken Peterson Park, if you look, every lot has a gate that accesses the park. So they must know something about that legality.
But Chris, those gates aren't locked.
Some of the owners put a padlock on them, and some
Okay.
don't. Some are just vacant lots, like camping lots that aren't, And I just thought I always thought that was a nice gesture of the community club to do that for the park access, so people don't have to drive all the way around or walk all the way around to use the driveway.
Oh, you're talking
So
about,
I understand what you're
say it
saying.
was a community center, or did you, I missed that part. It blurped out for me. Was it the community center has that, or who did you say has that?
The community club parks.
Isn't the
The ones
community
that-
club its own kind of its own entity away from the city park?
Yeah, it's the parks that the community club has throughout the community.
Okay, so they may
Like
have some
the
kind of
little-
different.
Would they have different easement requirements? I mean, you're still on public. Nick, you're shaking your head. Do you think so?
Yeah, the community club is a private entity. It's a 501c3. It's
Yeah.
a separate, that land is privately owned. And
Right.
from their organizational standpoint, they can say, hey, we're going to allow anybody or these certain people onto our property. From a public agency standpoint, we're a little different. So it's probably something I'd have to look into.
I can understand that gal's, concern, because I've been at Chinook and I've always wondered why the fence, didn't cover her property line, because dogs could run into her yard or, so I thought that myself, just being, at the park.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Heidi, was that it then about that?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
didn't know whether you were going to mention, and I don't know how in detail you're going to go. I mean, we're talking about the dog park. So, but yeah,
Well,
I'll stop.
we went there to ask what they thought about dog park, but then also what else they wanted. So this is kind of both, but, so the other was the basketball court that gets a lot of use. in the summer especially, she thought that that should be expanded. Playground needs improvement, which we know that already. And then the fish, oh, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, just a quick note about the playground there. To be blunt, the majority of that should just be torn down. It should not be retained.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll definitely get to that. And then so she was supportive of a dog park. There were a few local homeowners that were not home on Saturday that we do need to go back and get their input. But let's see, there is a pedestrian entrance on the northeast side of the park. And one of the neighbors was concerned the safety issues there because it goes down into like that ditch, that gully where the fence is open. He says he sees a lot of people slipping, but they use it all the time. And he was wondering if there was a way that we can maybe make some stairs to make it more accessible or something to make it safer for people to enter the park there instead of continuing down on Duck Lake Drive if they're walking. So there's that.
Simplest approach is just put in a culvert.
Yep.
I'll mention it.
Okay. And then he would like to see more picnic tables because they get used a lot in the summer. And then another woman felt like the gravel driveway should be paved with asphalt and more seating. Oh, and well, there's no wake buoy missing, but that's not really parks, but that was an issue. So, oh, and the swing set squeaks, but we know that should be taken out. So what Heidi and I observed was the fishing shack. There's one fishing shack and it's not big enough to seat everybody, but there's that ramp that goes down that has that 2 benches, and that ramp was built by the high school in 1999, Nick, you know what I'm talking about? So I guess there was a high school project and they built this ramp with 2 benches and a fishing pole that's ADA. And if they want more fishing shacks, we wondered if maybe we could just build a cover on one of those benches that's down on the ADA ramp that could then create an area that's covered. Is anybody know if that program's still available at the high school? If we could go to them and see if they wanted to do a cover? Does like the high school have a woodworking?
Well, I was going to say most high schools still have senior project requirements. And so I don't know if somebody took this on as a pretty significant senior project, because building a ramp and a full dock is a pretty big senior project. But my suggestion would just be to reach out. I have no idea. I wish I could offer more value there, but I do know that most schools do require senior projects though.
Yeah, or Eagle Scouts, if there's somebody
Yeah,
that's
that's
an
what I
Eagle
was
Scout.
thinking.
So that was Heidi and I's suggestion was, well, we can't physically put another shack out there. There's not any room, but we could enclose one of those benches down on that ramp area to do that. And then another fishing pole holder down there could definitely use that. But so that was our suggestions. Not one neighbor that we spoke to said anything negative about a dog park, but we still have a few houses to go back and knock on their door and see if they're home. We'll give them a couple tries. And if not, then I'll just leave a note with our information of concerns that they could email us. So that's what we got out of that. Heidi, did I miss anything?
No, not really. I was just going to mention that I felt that the neighbors were actually really supportive of having a dog park there, an actual park, because there are people who take their dogs and run there. And one woman said that she's afraid of dogs jumping up on her and she wished that it was properly gated so that there was a place for the dogs to play there. And that, everybody else seemed like, oh, it's a great idea. There was nothing that even indicated remotely that, oh, we wouldn't want this. So seemed
Thank you
real.
so much for doing that.
Yeah. But it did kind of get us thinking that maybe what we should be doing is reaching out as park board members to the neighbors of all the parks.
Right.
And not necessarily knocking on doors, because that takes a lot of time, but maybe setting up a booth at one of the next convention center Winter Fantasy or Sand and Sawdust Festival, that we can get a lot of input, because there's a lot of local people that go to those, and say if you're near this park, or we have the Adopt a Park sign, it's where you can sign up, ideas, and tell us how we're doing, and what do you think can
That's
be
a great
improved?
idea.
Isn't that what our open community, when we have these meetings, is for people to be able to come on and give us those kind of feedbacks, just like we got earlier today?
Well, I think the thought was that if we did something, and Kristen is going to talk about the Parks Foundation too, but if we did something in joint with the Parks Foundation, it would just be a way that we're there, because not everybody can come to these meetings. I mean, they work, or they're busy, but if it was on a weekend festival and we had a booth that was there, then, and people are just kind of wandering around, it allows a lot of maybe potential input. I mean, if we had 50 people show up to one of these meetings to give us their input, I mean, we would, think about the number, how much time you would need. Whereas if it's at a booth, it's a Saturday and a Sunday, and it's advertised, then, residents have an opportunity to come find out what's going on and give comments about their park. I mean, it's just
I think that's great.
another way to
Yeah.
reach out.
Nick, you
Yeah,
had a
it's us
question.
going to them. Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I've been in this line of work for, I don't know, about 15 years now. And most people in general, don't feel excited about, participating in a board meeting, or coming and listening to the board meeting. When they do get excited, it's about those volunteer opportunities. It's about getting out and doing things. And so those public outreaches, what the Fresh Waterway has done over the past, 5 to 7 years is a great example of that. Their Wine and Weeds events, they've had a variety of different outreach events where they're really trying to get people involved. And so my suggestion, and again, I don't really get a vote in this party, but my suggestion is that those sorts of outreach efforts are much more beneficial than somebody participating in a meeting like this.
I agree.
Okay, so with that being said, though, I'm going to make a motion that we talk about establishing an outreach plan, coming up with a plan at the next meeting, because I think that there might be the Winter Fantasy coming up. I'm not sure. It could be already over. I'm not
Hang on,
sure.
I have the calendar right here.
Okay. I might be too late for that.
Yes.
But I mean, for 22 in the springtime, certainly might be something that we might be able to come back and get together.
I have some thoughts on this, if I can
Yeah.
if I can throw my 2 cents in on this, okay?
Yep.
We started off talking about the dog park. We ended up talking about everything but a dog park, okay? I'm totally in favor of extending the fence across that lady's property. That's great and well. About the gate, I'm not sure that's a great idea, what kind of problems we'll run into the future. But getting back to the dog park, if you've been to a dog park, they're not grassy. So the dog park itself, the grass should come up. And if the grass comes up, then goat heads aren't there. So now it's not a 2-year project to get a dog park in place. As far as the fencing goes, Chinook Park already has some fencing available. I mean, we could use some of that fencing I mean, we wouldn't tear it down, build new fencing around it. Why not just use part of that fencing? And would the city of Ocean Shores not be able to help us install that? Nick might have an answer for that, so that maybe our cost would be a little bit less. And if we incorporated some fencing, our cost might be a little bit less. And maybe this is a project we could get off the ground a little quicker. So these are my thoughts on it. Again, I'm brand new here. I'm just trying to figure out where we stand here. I'm not even aware that at this point, if there's a budget for the Parks Board and how all that falls together, which I hope we have in time, real meetings face to face, so that we have a better opportunity to get involved and understand. Anyway, these are my thoughts on it. So I'd like to see a dog park not be put off like we do so often in the city, year after year after year, and actually get this moving. It just does not seem like it should be that difficult of a project to get started. It's just a dog park. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
all I have to say.
No, those are good points. And Nick, hang on a second, Ed, to answer your questions, because yes, it does have a fence, but the problem is that number one, the fence is old and falling over in a lot of spots. And number two, it's not tall enough. We need a 6-foot fence. Those are 4-foot fence that they have. So we would have to replace that regardless. And
So a 6-foot I've been to a lot of dog parks. I don't think I've ever been to one that has a 6-foot fence. I've seen 4-foot and 5-foot fences, but never anything that big. I'm just, again, I don't know if our city ordinances require that.
well, our city, or I don't think it's a city ordinance because we don't have a dog park. And if it's a city ordinance, obviously it's a 4-foot fence, but you have in Ocean Shores, we have some issues that we have to work with. One is deer. I mean, we want to try and keep the deer out, number one, but number two, I've not been to a dog park that had a 4-foot fence. I've only been to a dog park that's had a taller fence because you got really big dogs like Great Danes that could easily scale those 4-foot fences. So we need to make sure, and since it's right along Duck Lake Drive, which is a really pretty busy street, try to keep the dogs definitely safe and inside. So we definitely would need a 6-foot fence, is my opinion on that. And the grass, if we tore up the grass, we would have nothing but a muddy mess because we get so much rain here.
Well, there's gravel in there. The minute you get dogs in a dog park, the grass is gone. Okay, that's just it. I mean, if a dog park gets used, there is no grass in a dog park. So you can go with gravel. There are other ways we can approach that. If you're going to try and keep grass growing in a dog park, that's going to be just a really difficult situation to begin with. So anyway, just some thoughts. Like I said, I'd love to see us actually get moving on something and move forward to it with in some sort of a reasonable time before my dog's dead. Okay?
No, I understand that. And yeah, we all feel the same way. They've been talking about this since 2004, and there's no reason that there's not one in this city yet.
Exactly.
But Heidi, you're raising your hand, and Nick was raising his hand. So, oh no, Nick, did I answer the questions, Nick? Okay, Heidi.
Okay, I was just going to say, now, Kristen, you did start to make a motion, but you didn't have a second. So if it's okay, in response to Ed's point, I wanted to see if I could make a motion about doing some action for the dog park. Is that okay? Is that okay? So so I was going to make a motion that for the next meeting, we get maybe an ad hoc committee together to actually come up with requirements and maybe budget for addressing the dog park and what else we might want to do at Chinook at the same time. And we present that at the next meeting. And
Can we
then and
present-
I'm willing to be Go ahead, Anna.
Can we present a budget if we don't know which avenues we're exactly taking? Are we talking about a budget for tearing out all of the grass and replacing it with gravel? Are we talking about leaving the grass and just trying to do maintenance with the goat heads? Or, I mean, are we talking about replacing all the fence or part of it? How do we, I mean, don't we need to come to a conclusive, definitive answer of what the plan is moving forward to start working on a budget for it?
Well, that's what, I mean, yeah, I mean, you got a good point, but that was my point, is that the ad hoc committee would sort of come up with maybe options. It could be options or the specific things of, because they decided that, oh, this is probably what would be the best way to proceed. But there could also be options. It could be like, well, this is what we would do if we did grass. This is what would it cost if we did gravel, and some different options. But I just think we're not moved. I mean, obviously this has been in the process since 2004, and we will continue to discuss it. We only really have an hour and a half once a month. And we will continue to discuss it for the next 6 months. So I'm just proposing that maybe we get a small group together that really wants to work on this, addresses the actual needs, goes out there and looks at it, actually, comes up with some options, and then can get not a final budget, but can get more numbers together to help us make those decisions of how do we want to go forward. Because we have no way to know how we move forward until we have some idea of the numbers and also the options.
I think that's a good idea.
So your motion is to make an ad hoc committee to get numbers together for the dog park at Chinook Park. Is that what I'm hearing?
Options and numbers.
Options,
Options for things to do, requirements and numbers.
Okay, yeah, I can second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So now I
Any-
guess the question is, who's on the committee?
the
Well,
next
I'd like
question.
to be on it.
I'll
Okay.
be on it.
I can be on it.
I'll be on it too. I've got
Can't
some
have
input.
four,
from-
can't have four, that's a quorum, that's a meeting.
Oh, that's right.
So, Heidi and Ed and myself as the ad hoc.
Well, if Chris really
Okay.
feels she wants to be on it, I can step off if Chris really feels that she wants to be on it.
I'm either way.
Okay, so let's just do the ad hoc committee of Kristen Hartman, Heidi Owens, and Ed Schroll.
Okay.
Sarah, do I need to make a motion for that? Okay. Just want to make sure. Thanks. All right. So motion though, I was going to do two different motions. One was, the dog got done. So the next is a motion that we talk about on the next agenda, how we can talk about the other parks with the city. I'd like to kind of figure that out too. So I'm gonna make a motion to do that for the next agenda.
You said it.
Okay.
Your original thing, you said a outreach plan to discuss. Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
The winter fantasy is going to be November 26th through 28th. So it's
Yeah.
at the end of this month.
Yeah, that's too soon. So we'll probably have to do it like when next year, early next year, if we're going to try and get into piggyback on something that the convention center and the city are doing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And,
Okay.
and Kristen, just for clarification, this is to discuss at the next meeting an outreach plan. Is
Mhm.
that right? Okay.
Yeah, because it kind of came up as an idea when you and I were out. So, okay, all in
Right.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, great. So next on is new business, the Parks and Rec comp plan. Heidi, you're up.
Okay.
1 second.
Sorry.
You amended the agenda to add 2 old business items. So you have budget and secretary.
Oh,
Oh,
right.
sorry. Thank you. Gosh, I'm sorry about that. So Chris was asking if somebody else could take over for the secretary and recording of minutes. And I'm going to make a motion that Heidi Owens takes over for that. Do I have a
I
second?
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed?
Well,
Okay,
me, but that's
Heidi.
okay. I'll do it.
All right, Heidi, you are new, and Chris, thank you so much for helping out when we first got started. Really appreciate that. If you wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't have gotten started. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, yes, and then next is budget. So Nick, when we talked about the budget a little bit. So yes, Don Williams, he is correct. My understanding is because the summer fund program did not happen in 21, that money got rolled over to 22. And we do have a 2-year budget. And so I have not met with Bob Peterson, who runs the summer fund program yet. It is my intention to do so to find out how he is going to spend this money and what he's adding. I have understood that there might be some new additions because of COVID regulations, such as safety for having a nurse on staff, which they haven't had to worry about before. So before before we talk about that amount of money, I'd like to hear from Bob to find out how he is going to use that money. And so we can have him, I can ask him and invite him to sit in on the next Parks Board meeting to talk about that money before we decide what we're going to do with that, is my suggestion. Do I have any other suggestions on that? No. Nick, I know that we talked about that the porta potties, they're costing more and more money. And I know that there's been discussion of maybe trying to put permanent restrooms in some of the parks to decrease the cost of the porta potties, but we do know that that could potentially cost more money. But I think that we can amend some of the budget items, next year, because it ends at the end of 22. So it's not like we have to make this decision today on what we do with the budget. But that was definitely a concern, though, going back, was the summer fund program. But go ahead, Nick.
So one thing that we haven't talked about, and realistically right now is not the best time to dive into that, but as we start to get the creative juices flowing, I was politely reminded that the ARPA funds are something that may be suitable for enhancing recreational facilities. As we talk about potentially dog park improvements or permanent restrooms, those are things that legitimately likely will be funded or could be funded by ARPA funding. And so as we start to think about some of the priorities, and once we dive through the Parks and Rec comprehensive plan, we may start to see kind of some patterns where things kind of blend together, and we can kind of really create a solid story for council to carve out some ARPA funding for our recreational facilities like Chinook Park or wherever else we've got those public restrooms. So just wanted to throw that out there. Again, it's nothing that can be solved today. It's something just to kind of get people to think about some of the big important improvements that can and should be made. When we talk about the North Bay Park, paving and restoration of that asphalt, that's not a cheap thing. I've been talking about that for the last 7 years. And my best guess right now is $200,000 for construction and $50K for design and CM services. So you're talking $250,000 to rehabilitate that asphalt and that entire parking lot. And the same thing for a portable restroom, or not a portable restroom, a new permanent restroom, assuming that it's at a facility where we have water and sewer already on site. you're talking probably 200 to 300,000 for a total project cost for a new facility. And so when you compare that to, yeah, $500 to $800 a month, your payback period tends to be quite a while when you talk about permanent restrooms, but it's an advantage for the recreational facility. It's an improvement on the recreational facility. So again, the point to make is, over the next month, start thinking big picture as it relates to, what sort of improvements and how they dovetail to the recreation plan. And, as you roll into the first quarter of 2022, it could be a great opportunity to start talking about, additional funding through ARPA. Sarah, is there something else that I missed?
I just wanted to add in, because we are so late in the game for doing anything for 2022, as in this budget. When we did the review of all of the city council requests to use the ARPA funding, because the city of Ocean Shores couldn't show a loss in revenue because we did well during the pandemic, the funds can't be used for any capital projects, but they can be used for things that promote outdoor, that way it goes hand in hand with the pandemic itself, like creating that ability to be outdoors. And so we asked about restrooms and we asked about dog parks, and all of those were viable things that the money can be used on. Not that the council may approve all of those things, but all of these outdoor recreational happenings can be used for that. And the ARPA discussion is going to come in front of council at the first of the year. So that's when they're really going to start talking about using the $906,000 that we got. And we have until December 31 of 2024 to obligate those funds. And then we have another 2 years after that to liquidate those funds. But in that interim, we will get another round of ARPA funding on top of that. So like, this is really the Parks Board's time and ability to get some funding for these various projects.
Good to know.
Sorry. So, okay. So they're going to start talking about this in January. And then what I'm hearing you say is we have until January to get our list together, or we can keep at to present to city council.
I would definitely be prepared to, when they begin that discussion, because they're going to, know all of these other things that they want to do. They, we can't, we're not allowed. And these are the things that they can. So they need to hear the exact things that are passion projects for the Parks Board.
With pricing.
Ballpark figures, yeah.
Go ahead, Heidi. Oh, can't hear you, Heidi.
Sorry, I was muted. Sarah, is there a document that lists that information? You guys said you asked about it. So where we actually have something that's in black and white that we can read, that can help us, compare what is possible with what our list of priorities are.
We have a FAQ document that was provided, but really it goes back to our grant writer on, getting down to specifics that are allowable. Like, you really have to read and ask them, the state, a lot of questions to get yes or no answers.
Okay. So maybe what we need to do is come up with the list and then go to Sarah with that list to get clarification. So we're ready and organized, and we do that before January comes with our list of what we'd like, rather than waiting until January and then asking and then finding out it's a no.
That would be, yeah, even before prices. Can we do these 5 things? And then that list would be provided to our grant coordinator, and she would go out and vet those requests. And if they're, ones that those monies can be used towards, she would be able to say that with certainty. And then when you got to council, you would have already vetted those things can have the money used for them.
Okay, thank you.
Nick, anything from you?
I was going to say, don't try to read the facts from the feds. They are. I was telling Sarah that I don't even understand them right now. So,
Okay. All right.
if somebody else does and they're telling us, hey, it's a green light on, any of these 3 types of projects, we'll go execute on that.
Okay, all right, so we have one meeting left in this year. How do we have a special meeting to just talk about some of the things, I mean, that are 5 top priorities as a board?
So- If I can jump in,
Yeah.
one thing that the Fresh Waterways Advisory Board just went through, this analysis of, the city needs to do more. And so, each council member or each board member came forward and said, okay, these are all of the things that I think are important for the fresh waterways. And so each one of the board members, had a list of items that they thought was important. And what they did is they mashed all of that together. And then they went through and ranked all of them. That didn't happen in a month.
Right.
I get that. I understand that. But I think part of what, this board, has as far as an advantage goes, you guys already have, kind of a key understanding of, you believe the dog park's important. You believe, North Bay Park is important. And so what I would almost suggest is, focus on 2 or 3 facilities, North Bay Park, the facilities at Chinook, expanding the facilities there at Chinook, maybe putting in a restroom at Chinook and the dog park. I mean, there's a host of things that you can kind of piggyback on, as it relates to just that facility. And so it's that whole Baskin Robbins sort of concept. When you go to Baskin Robbins and you got 31 flavors to choose from, it takes you a little bit longer than it does when it's just, chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla, right? And so
Yeah.
If we can kind of narrow that down and everybody agree that, hey, Chinook, North Bay, are the 2 areas that we want to see improvements on, that makes it super clean and a lot more efficient for you guys.
Okay, that's fine. And then Sarah, playground equipment, could that be ARPA money?
Yeah.
Because
So like the things that we specifically asked on top, like finding out that we couldn't do any capital facility improvements, were specific. The restrooms at a city park, that's a yes. Playground equipment, that was a yes. ADA compliant accesses, yes. So yeah.
Okay, all right, so what I'm hearing is that maybe we just need to pick our 2 main parks, which are Chinook and North Bay, and get those items. But again, as a board, we have to decide, and get some, well, Nick, you got to get some prices, right? We don't know how much, we know that Chinook Park's playground equipment has to come down. We know that. It's over 30 years old. It's not safe. It's terrible. So, but what's it going to cost to get a new playground equipment in? Right? We don't know.
We don't, and many times when we're scoping a project, and we have super tight timelines, we're going to grab a number that we think we can hit, and we're going to go high because it's better to go high and not get burned. So, when we talk about replacing playground equipment, if it's in conjunction with a project, we'll say 50 grand. If it's that project alone, then we'll say 100 grand. Just nice round numbers is going to be the cleanest way to go. And the reality is, you guys don't even have to worry about the cost. You can say, these are our priorities in order, do as much as you can.
Okay, all right. But again, though, we've got to get this information before January. So,
well, and so when I say January, because that is the direction they wanted to get through the budget and then start the conversation in January, because there's going to be new council members and kind of start the whole conversation. So it's not like presenting January 10th at the first council meeting. That's just after the first of the year when they're going to start discussing all of this again.
okay.
So sorry.
But regardless, no, you're fine. But regardless, would what do you guys think? Do we have a special meeting or just discuss this at the next meeting or have an ad hoc committee?
I
What-
say
what
we
do you-
have another meeting. I say we have another meeting on this,
A special meeting?
special meeting on this.
Okay, okay, motion then to do a special meeting to discuss our top priorities so we can get that to Nick. Do I have a, so he can get some numbers together? Is that what I'm hearing? Nick, is that what you need from us? Is some couple hot ticket items that you're gonna have to get some money on, right?
Yeah, we'll just say it's the Parks Board priority list.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so special meeting. Oh, go ahead, Heidi.
Well, I think our next meeting is the 8th of December, because it's the second Wednesday, right? So what I was wondering, because we're going to talk a little bit about the plan right now, and then the ad hoc committee on the dog park will present it then. So I was just going to suggest that if we do a special meeting, we do it right after that, because we'll have had more discussion. So we either do it like right after that week or early the following week, where we don't want to get too close to the end of the year, I would think. So so that was my suggestion, that we do it after next meeting if we do a special meeting.
Can we roll an extra long meeting? Is that a possibility, to have the 1 o'clock one and then roll right into the next one? Is at 2 o'clock that same day? So we can just keep it rolling?
You wouldn't have to have a special meeting for that. Your meeting would just be longer.
Okay,
So if you decide, hey, we're gonna put in 2-3 hours at the next meeting, it's just a meeting. You don't have to do anything special for it. There's no time restriction on your meetings.
One thing to throw out is that I do have a commitment at 3 o'clock that is the same day. It's a Public Works Committee with council, so
okay.
that one I
Okay,
need to make sure that I'm at.
okay. I don't know. I feel like if we met just to discuss some top priorities before the next meeting, Heidi, it would make the next meeting maybe go a little smoother, is my feeling. No?
Well,
I'm
I
for
just thought
that.
if we're going to be talking, if we're going to be presenting at the next meeting, the ideas of maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. It's just that, we could do it beforehand, and, and everybody can come back with them.
I think we got to give Nick a little time under him to get the ideas from us and get the ball rolling on some prices, regardless of the comp plan. We can always make the changes because we have a year until that comp plan is due. So I'm going to make a motion that we have a special meeting in a couple weeks. Probably.
I
Are you
second
gonna
that.
have time to do your ad hoc on the other part, things that you're looking at, as well as have the availability to research into some of these special things that we want to bring together for this next special meeting?
I think so. Do you want to,
Okay,
the ad hoc committee shouldn't take too long to because we kind of know what we want. We
it's
can
not the
always-
knowing what you want, it's the things you haven't thought of that takes the time.
Mhm, that's true. Well, when do you think the special meeting should happen?
Oh, I have no answer for that. I was just asking, are we filling our basket too fast?
Go ahead, Ed.
Too full.
Ed. You're muted.
You're muted.
Ed, we still can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, how about December 1st? And what about the possibility of every member of the board putting a list together of what they think are priorities, and then we have something to talk about?
I like that.
Yeah, just your own thoughts, and then we can bring them together, and we can do like Nick said, we can cut them down to the top 2 or 3 or 4 priorities.
Okay. Is everybody available December 1st before we make a motion for that date? Heidi, you're not available? Okay.
That's a Wednesday.
The week before the meeting.
Mhm.
Definitely
good.
not available the week before that. That's Thanksgiving weekend. So
Heidi, are
not-
you
not that
available
one.
December 3rd?
Yes.
Is everybody available Friday? Sarah's not. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. We're,
Sarah's not part of the park board, is she?
what about, Tuesday, the 30th in the afternoon, like later afternoon? Anybody, the Tuesday, the 30th?
I'm on the radio till 3.
It
Like-
has to be
I'm good.
after 3.
After 3, would 3 o'clock work?
I'm on the radio till 3, so 3:30 would work.
Okay. Sarah, are you around on Tuesday, the 30th at 3:30? Nick, are you, well, you don't need to be here if you don't want to be, Nick, actually. All right, Chris, are you available?
I am.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we're gonna have a special meeting on November 30th at 3:30 to discuss the parks special assignment. What'd you call it, Nick? I liked what you called it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposition, opposed? Nope, okay.
Can we call it the wish list?
The wish list, what'd you call it, Nick?
I think it was just, project prioritization.
Project prioritization, okay, I like that.
Okay.
Okay, so then moving on. All right, so we're kind of on a time crunch. Sorry, Heidi. We're going to talk about comps plan. Heidi, go for it.
Okay, I don't know if everybody had a chance to look, just by show of hands, who had a chance to really look through this comp plan? It's very extensive and big. Okay. So I'm just going to give a little bit of overview. This is an extensive plan. It has 7 chapters. The first chapter basically outlines a number of objectives and it explains the park improvement project and responsibilities of the park board, as well as City Works and the Parks Foundation. But in the next 2 chapters, it covers the city owns park. The next 2 chapters, it covers the city owns parks, the city recreation sites, including canals, the beach approaches. It also includes North Beach School District, recreation facilities, and Washington State parks in the area, and the beach as a state highway. It's chapter 5 where things get very interesting, because that's where they got the demand and need analysis. So in this chapter, there is significant demographic as well as visitor data to analyze the needs of the city's park and recreation facilities, as well as giving public input that was taken at the time, probably in 2017, and other anecdotal factors that might affect demand. But from there, the plan gets into very detailed needs and for both developed and undeveloped parks. So for example, at Texmar, a lot of these needs were to do the signs, the double-faced signs, which the Parks Foundation at the time, under the leadership of Michael Darling, who was on both the foundation and on the Parks Board, they raised money and they did a lot of that. That's where we got those signs at that time. But there's also so Texmar was one of the ones that got one of those signs, but on the list for Texmar, it still includes doing additional covered picnic areas, a hand launch, for the dock. And some of these parks, like in Chinook, they point out the problems with the play structure and how it's not safe. So these needs get very specific. And some of them we may ask, are they even what we want to do? So for example, King Cypress, which is one of the loop parks that's off of Razor Clam, it's on South Razor Clam. The need there is to completely clear the lot, put in playground equipment, picnic equipment, a grove of trees. And when you hear all the people in the community complain about the lot clearing edge to edge, that's almost inconsistent with maybe some of what we might want to do. So my point is that I think that these needs need to be re-looked at, and it may be worthwhile for people to to look definitely at those for the North Bay Park and Chinook Park before our special meeting, and also possibly the parks that you are overseeing or you're inspecting, so that we kind of identify, well, are there other needs? Because some of the needs speak to ADA needs throughout the park, throughout the whole list. But there is overall the issue of, does this extensive list open the city to potential lawsuits if an accident were to occur, if something, was happened that was identified in this list as needing repair or improvement. So and Kristen and I looked at it individually, but we did have a chance to talk about it on Saturday when we were out at Chinook Park, because that was one of the things, is that it identified as the playground is unsafe. So, and that it needs improvement. So that's why, do we really want this type of list, or, or do we want to come up with a way to prioritize? Because what is interesting is that this was put in place in 2018, but there really hasn't been budgeting for very much of these, except what was done through the Parks Board and maybe a little bit of maintenance. So the next chapter kind of goes through the capital improvement program, and they have some funding spreadsheets, which I don't really quite understand, but this is something, again, we have the opportunity now to maybe come up with some priorities for the ARPA funds, but we're also going to have to do this also by the end of next year to see if we can get anything in the budget for priorities for the following year. So going forward, the plan has been adopted through 23 for the current comp plan revision that the City Council, the Planning Commission's been working on, and the City Council is going to go through the process to adopt. They have just said for the parks that they want to adopt this plan as is. We will not have time to update this, and it does go to 23. So the question is, how do we as a board approach this to go forward, to come up with a new plan for 23 going forward, maybe 5 years through to 27? So, and so what do we need to do? Do we want to use this plan again as a model? There's a ton of data. There's a lot of data in here that would need to be updated. It's very extensive. When you read it, you will be like, wow, how it breaks things down. Well, maybe you won't be wow, but I was. Or do we want to take a different approach, be a little less extensive, or and also then the big thing is, how will we divide up this work? Because it's a big job, and we obviously I don't know of any one of us that would want to take it on individually. So that's kind of the overview, but certainly I think our special meeting will help us move forward. The other thing that I was hoping is that for the next meeting, we have a chance, people come back with maybe ideas, and each of us, even if it's a little statement that we write ahead of time that gets submitted with the agenda, so we hear from people their ideas of how will we address this, because we kind of need to address this through 22 so that we can be ready with a new plan when 23 rolls around. So that's all I have. Any comments or questions?
How do you get a copy?
Yeah, well, I've read parts of the comp plan. It's 188 pages, and yeah, Heidi, it's extensive, and it's due at the end of 23. So we've got some time. That's why we're bringing it up now. I think that not everybody's had a chance to really look at it. So before we figure out what we want to do, I think we need to just let our board take a look at it, come up with some ideas, and figure out how we're going to do it. But we wanted to talk about it now, set the groundwork now. So I think that we should give, because Ed's new, today's his first day. So, we're not asking you to read the whole 188 pages, but definitely get an idea of what's in there so we can come up with a better plan on how we want to attack this. because
I
it's
would
going to take
love
all next year to do it.
I would love to do that if I got a copy.
You were emailed a copy.
Well,
So-
okay. Well, here we are again. So maybe we can figure out this email
Yeah.
situation so
Yeah.
I can get a copy. That'd be
Yeah, and I
great.
think right in the beginning, Ed, you were having some technical difficulties. So what we had said in the beginning was you definitely reach out to Sarah and get your email address situated. She might not have the right one. It was the one that you put on for your application.
Right,
That
which should
emailed
be
the
the
stuff
right
to you.
one.
So make sure she has the right one, but get together with her, and going forward, I think for the next meeting, it should all be worked out, but we will Sarah can email you another comp
That'd be
plan.
great.
You didn't
I'll
get that, so
I'll take care of that. Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Thank you. Nick, go ahead.
So a couple of thoughts. I was with the Parks Board as we went through preparation of this document. And, one of the most important things to remember is that Rich Otto, I love the man dearly. He was a NASA employee, and he took this document and kind of made it his baby. Given that he was from NASA, there was a detail focus on a lot of different things, as Heidi you succinctly pointed out. He went into a lot of detail on a lot of different things. One of the things that we constantly kind of try to circle back to is that first things first, we want to be able to take care of what we have. So the concept of establishing and redeveloping new parks or developing new parks, it is something that my suggestion would be keep that on the back burner. We want to be able to take care of what we have before we start adding new things. So that's suggestion number one. As it relates to the table, or I guess it's step 3. So it's the chart, the funding analysis, funding source identification chart. Again, when you look at a capital improvement plan, in most cases, you're going to see, here's all of the projects, and here's our annual years that we're going to look at, and we're going to have a bucket in there for money on each year. And that's basically what the Parks Board did with this document is they identified North Bay is first, and that should be the focus, 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 21, and a total of, almost $300,000 spent on that park in, those 5 years. That hasn't happened. So again, if you haven't implemented the capital improvement plan, from a starting point, probably best just to kind of go back to that starting point and initiate the CIP rather than try to figure out how to reinvent the wheel. So priority 1 was North Bay Park. Priority 2 is Emerson or Chinook. Priority 3 was Emerson. Priority 4 was Lions Club, and so on and so forth. And so all of that is identified on page 76. Again, the big areas where investments were desired was North Bay Park and Chinook Park. So those are my 2 cents. And as you guys work towards the concept of reestablishing this document, in 2022, 2023. Keep in mind, it does not need to be this detailed. That's Rich really liked that concept because it made him feel like he had everything covered. You don't have to go through that detailed effort. So those are my 2 cents on that.
Oh yeah,
That's
no,
good to know.
we are not gonna we're not gonna reinvent this wheel like that. You did a great job. It's very impressive. And I know they spent a lot of time on this, and I appreciate that a lot because yeah, there's a lot. So yeah, thank you, Nick. But you're right, they did definitely earmark a lot of the issues at the parks, which is great, which is going to help us go forward with the ARP money and things like that. It's going to help, but I just think that we do need to take a look at it, but the board hasn't had a chance to really kind of delve into it yet because it's new. So definitely think that we need to make a motion that we keep this on the agenda for the future come up with some ideas. Go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah, I just want to say, I hope that, in my discussion of it, it is impressive that I didn't like, indicate that anything negative about it. It's just that it would be involved to try to keep it up at this level. And now that I understand that Rich was a NASA employee, I get it. So, but I would like, in the spirit of what Kristen just said, I would like to make a motion that, well, I don't know, first, just for discussion purposes, do the members have time to review this? Not like read it page to page, but review this before the next meeting and kind of come up with some ideas of how they think might be a way to approach it. That's what I was hoping, that at the next meeting, we can share ideas of how to approach it. Does that sound doable to the other members, Anna, Chris, and Ed?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, and
Anna, you're muted.
I've kind of gone over it, but like you said, there's so much to see. I literally cannot retain it all. And even though I've gone through and highlighted so many things, I almost feel like we're starting to pile up a lot of these things happening. And I think for me, and this is literally just for me, if we knew what areas that we wanted to focus on, like we talked about doing, everybody kind of making a list, and then having some time to go to that plan and highlight just those areas and then bring it to it, could really help dissect that 180 pages, down to something better that we could deal with, something I can chew on a lot easier for me.
Yeah, and that's what Heidi is saying. But I don't know if Ed's had a chance to look. So like one of the ideas was, I'm responsible for a couple of park inspections. Do I take that section of the comp plan and delve into it and then come back with my suggestions? So we were just gonna, what you just said, but do that in the next meeting.
So in the next meeting, we're not only doing that, we're also talking about what we've kind of gone out to the parks and decided as far as what to do with Chinook. And then there was something else that we were doing. Let me go back to my notes here. Sorry, I had a puppy who had a potty break and I had to go deal with that for a minute. So I just
No. We're not gonna, just to clarify, we're not gonna talk about the sections the next meeting. We're just going to come up with how we want to go about dissecting the comp plan and then going forward.
that I'm all for. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all we're
I
doing.
thought we needed to do all of this in the
Yeah.
next meeting.
No.
I'm like, whoa.
Just coming up with how we're going to, as a board, dissect it and come
Okay.
up with
Or
a plan
approach it.
and then go forward and do it.
Okay.
That's-
then I'm on
That's the
board.
motion.
Okay. Yes, I'm on board.
Yeah,
Okay.
clarify how we're going to dissect it or approach it after, and that's beyond the priorities that we set at the next meeting,
Yeah.
at the special meeting.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just giving
Yeah.
Ed and we didn't know who had a chance to look over it. So that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I make that motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay. Any opposed? I didn't hear that. Okay. I did add a new business item to the agenda, which is Parks Foundation. Heidi and I got to meet with Michael Darling. He is the president of the Parks Foundation. I don't know if you guys know what the Parks Foundation is, but a very quick synopsis is the Parks Foundation is a nonprofit 501(c) that was established by Michael Darling and some other residents. Those money, foundation to earmark money that is specific for parks. So example would be like how the budget is now is all the money's in a general fund. So that money doesn't have to go to parks. So this is an opportunity for, let's say, a private citizen to say, I want to donate $1,000 and I want it to go to this in the parks. That's the responsibility of the foundation. We met with him to find out, first of all, what that was. Number two, to find out, well, is there money in there? And there's $3,000, which isn't a lot of money. And, but he was thinking about shutting it down. And so I think Heidi and I convinced him that maybe just hold off on shutting this down, because actually that's a kind of a great idea. You know, they've done fundraisers in the past that have helped fund some things in the past for parks. And I think that that can happen again, but obviously COVID shut down a lot of that kind of fundraising effort. I felt like because the Parks Foundation is so parallel to the Parks Board, that we really are parallel, we run separate, but we should running together, that in order for us to know what's going on in the foundation, there either needs to be a representative from the Parks Board on the foundation board, or a foundation board member come to a meeting. So are you following me? Am I making sense?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I like the foundation. I like the fact that it's a nonprofit and that funds go directly to anything parks related. And we could do a lot with that. And the city can't use that money for something else. And there's a lot of people that want a lot of things to do in the parks. I would like to see a Parks Board member sit on the Parks Foundation board. So there's communication going between the two, because they're not going to know what our needs are unless they're on a Parks Board meeting, is my thought. But I didn't know what your guys' thoughts were.
Who's on the foundation board now? Besides
Michael Darling, Kathy Peterson, and there's one more. Oh, Heidi, did you write down the names? I did. I don't think I wrote down all the names. There's only 3, but there can be 4. And he was amicable to having a Parks Board member on his board. If you there's 3. I can't remember who the 3rd person is. Sorry. Nick, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but again, that was something that was formed a few years back. And most of the conversations about forming that started at the Parks Board meeting. And so again, the driver behind that was the Fresh Waterways has a similar sort of setup. We have an advisory board and a 501c3 that operates independently. The library is a city component and has a separate 501c3. So this is the 3rd entity that functions, very similarly, and that was their intent. It's a great setup. The key piece, as you noted, Kristen, is that there needs to be, bidirectional communication. And so having somebody involved on their board would be extremely beneficial.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that. We just need that communication. We need that person. How we do it, let's come up with some ideas, but my idea was to have a Parks Board member sit on the foundation board, was my first thought.
Do you know when they meet?
They meet right now once a year because they haven't met because of COVID. And they were going to close it, but Michael was pretty excited about the direction of the Parks Board now. He really liked what we had to say and liked who was on it. And they would meet however often as needed. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time. I just wanted somebody to have communication with them.
I can do that.
Okay. Oh, Ed was raising his hand though. Well, hang on a second, Chris. Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ed.
I would be open to that also.
Okay. All right. Chris, you were the first one to raise your hand. Ed, do you mind if I give it to Chris?
No, not at all. That's fine.
Actually, Ed has more experience with foundations than I do. That's for sure.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't care. I think it's great. Ed or Chris, I mean,
Let's go with Ed because of his experience, and
Okay.
I think he'd be a good fit with the foundation.
yeah, okay,
Thank you, Ed.
so, all right, so, do I need to make a motion, Sarah, on this one? No.
Can't hurt.
I don't think so, because you guys are
Yeah.
just deciding who's gonna be a liaison.
Okay,
And, you know,
Alright.
if Ed can't make it, somebody else could go in his stead. It's not necessary.
yeah, perfect. I like that. Okay, Ed, I will reach out to Michael Darling and CC you in the email, so you can get that ball rolling. All right, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
think that's gonna be really good for everybody. All right, so, all right, moving forward. So anything to report? I have nothing to report. Anna, do you have anything to report? In
Regards
general?
to- In general, in regards to my parks.
Well, just in general.
In general, no.
Okay, how about Chris? Anything to report in general?
No.
Heidi?
Not in general.
Okay, Ed, you're new, but anything to report?
The parking lot at Safeway is very crowded.
Okay, noted, thank you. Okay, so Eric, Councilman Noble's not present for the council liaison, so park inspection report. So, all right, so Chinook Park and Spinnaker Park, their status quo. The only thing with Chinook Park, Nick and I let John Wagner know, was on Saturday, there was a lot of standing water over that water main in the middle of the grass. It could have just been from the recent rain, but my concern was maybe a pipe burst. So he was gonna get on that, so. Spinnaker is Spinnaker. Nothing new there. Okay, so Chris, you've got North Bay Park, Limpet, and North End Grand Canal.
I do, and they looked good when I drove by a couple days ago, but after yesterday's windstorm, I'll check them out again.
Okay, great. And then Anna.
So South Grand got cleaned up really nice. It's wow, big difference, but there's still a lot of the blackberry bushes right when you first enter in, they're overgrowing across the top. So I just think it needs to just be trimmed back a little bit, just for the safety of not tripping or anything like that. And I also noticed that there's potholes, which I was hoping that that John Williams was on here because I was going to bring up the potholes, but both Marine View and South Grand have some pretty good sized potholes right as you're entering into them. I don't know if that's a parks department or if that's like a DOT or where that exactly comes into, but that's something that should be addressed. There's a couple really big ones.
It's John in both cases, so that's a beautiful piece.
Okay. Okay, there you go. That's everything else looked good.
Great. Heidi.
Okay, so Texmar was fine. Gunderson, as always, was fine. You could tell that the wind had gone through there though, because a bunch of the bocce balls had been blown out, so I put them back in. But Emerson had a tree down, and John Wagner, I let him know, and so hopefully and it's a big tree, and so that's gonna take some effort. Everything else there looked fine. I think at some point that parking area does need to be re-gravelled because there is getting to be some pretty big divots, but we'll see what it looks like in the spring. So for now, it's just the tree, and it has been reported.
And then Ed, you weren't here for the first meeting when we divvied these up, but we gave you the skate park and the Lions Club Milo Schneider Park.
Right.
So just so you know, going forward, once a month, we just, after a big storm really is what we do. We just kind of make sure that everything is still good, no trees down. And if there's an issue, we just report it to Nick Bird or John Wagner. So those are your two parks.
Right, I saw that on the itinerary, the agenda here today. So I will have an answer for you at our next meeting.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So let's see the future meeting items. Obviously, we've got comp plan, dog park, so many things.
Right here.
It's a.
And then the
adopt-
outreach plan.
Sign. The what
Also
one?
talking about the outreach.
The outreach plan, adopt a sign. And budget, maybe some budget. Okay, so next meeting is just a special meeting, November 30th
Yes.
at 3:30. And the next regular meeting is December 8th at 1 o'clock. All right, so I am making a motion to adjourn. Do I have at 2:48? Do I have a second?
I'll
I second.
second that.
I second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye.
Bye.
All
Um,
right.